All right, let's jump on to page 5 here. So Ms. Sorensen built a triangular patio with side lengths 20, 16, and 30 feet. Find the measure of the angle opposite the 30-foot side. I'm just going to go ahead and draw a triangle here, and it doesn't have to be super to scale. I'm going to call this A, B, and C. And then it told me that the sides were 30, 16, and 20. So it looks like I'm looking for the measure of the angle opposite the 30-foot side, so I'm looking for angle C. If you labeled your triangle differently, you might be looking for something different. So I'm going to make sure I label all my sides. This will be B, this will be C, and this will be A. So we've got C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine C. So 30 squared is equal to 20 squared plus 16 squared minus 2 times 20 times 16. And we don't know what C is, so I'm just going to write cosine C. Do this math, and this math. That's going to give us a 900 is equal to a 656 minus 640 cosine C. Get rid of this 656. That's going to cancel out right there, and 900 minus 656 is 244, and that's going to be equal to our negative 640 cosine C. Let's get cosine C all by itself and divide by negative 640, and that's going to disappear, and I'm left with, I'm going to switch this, I think. It's going to leave me with cosine C is equal to 244 divided by a negative 640. Now don't freak out that this is negative. This just indicates that we're not in the first quadrant, which kind of makes sense when you look at the picture. All right, so we're going to take inverse of both sides. So that's going to give me measure of angle C, or just C. Measure of angle C is equal to the cosine inverse of 244 divided by negative 640. And I'm going to get that the measure of angle C is roughly equal to 112.4 degrees. And that does make sense, right? Because 30 is the biggest side there, so it should be an obtuse angle. All right, number 17, determine whether two interior walls meet at a right angle. People oftentimes mark a point on a wall right in the corner, and they measure 3 feet out this way. They measure 4 feet out this way. Then they find that diagonal length and they hope that it's 5. If it's not a right angle. Here we measure 5 feet and 2 inches, and so this is 5 feet 2 inches right here. But I'd like to go ahead and convert this into feet. So 2 inches is going to be 2 divided by 12, which is 1/6 obviously, and 2 divided by 12 is 0.1666. So this would actually be 5 feet and a 0.1666. All right. So the question is, what angles do the walls meet at? And we know the answer is not 90 degrees. In fact, we actually know it's going to be bigger because that making this longer than 5 is going to actually kind of make that go out wider, if that makes sense. All right. So here I'm going to label my sides as a C, a B, and an A. So this will be my lowercase b, my lowercase a, and my c. And so I've got c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c. Plugging into that, I get 5.1666 squared equals 3 squared plus 4 squared minus 2, 3, 4 cosine c. Now I think I actually dropped one of the 6's. I actually did 5.166 squared, and that gives me 26.6875, which is this whole thing right here becomes 25, and this whole thing right here becomes 24. All right, let's subtract 25 from both sides. That's going to disappear here, and I am left with a 1.6875 is equal to negative 24 cosine c divide by the negative 24 because we want to get cosine by itself. And we get that cosine C is equal to 1.6875 divided by negative 24. Now we have to take cosine inverse of both sides, so we've got measure of angle C equals cosine inverse of this right here. And I do that math and I get measure of angle C is equal to 94.03 degrees. Okay, when I said this whole thing, I meant this whole thing goes into there. And so that makes sense, right? That we're obviously not 90 degrees, but we're fairly close. All right, here we go. On this one, we need to identify the period, the horizontal shift, the vertical shift, amplitude, and reflection. Let's just go straight down the line, and then we'll actually deal with period last because that does require some math. So here this negative means reflect over x-axis. The 3 is the amplitude, so A equals 3. This minus 4 actually means right 4, and that plus 2 means up 2. And now let's calculate the period, which is going to be equal to 2 pi over b. Here our b is pi over 2. So this is going to be equal to 2 pi times, we need to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2 over pi. Pi's cancel, and I'm left with 4. All right, looks like that we have everything we need there. Okay, next one here, we do not have a negative, so it's not reflected over the x-axis, but we do have an amplitude of 2. We have a left 1 and an up 4. And let's deal with the period now. That's going to be 2 pi over 4, which is equal to 2 pi times 4 over pi. The pi's cancel, 2 times 4 is 8, so that's equal to our period. All right. Last one here, again, it's positive, so we don't have reflection over the x-axis, but we do have an amplitude of 3. We do have a right 2 and an up 10. And let's deal with now our b. Period is going to be equal to 2 pi over b, or 2 pi over, in this case, pi. Pi's cancel, and I am left with a period of 2. All right. Next page here, we're going to graph the following. And you should draw your own coordinate grid, given the information. We should label the min, the midline, and the max, and you should draw at least 2 periods. And I am going to give these same directions on your test. So let's start with step 1. So step 1 is going to be to label your axes. All right, and basically I'm starting at 3 of my amplitude, so that's going to be a 1, 2, 3. My midline's at 0, and I'm going to be at 3 right there. However, notice I've got a plus 1 there. So if I add 1 to all this, I actually have a coordinate grid that's going to be midline at 1, a max at 4, and it looks like we've got add 1 to negative 3, and we're at a minus 2 for our min. So I do like to graph that. I'm going to go over here and do that. Although I'm not going to go so negative here. Let's go. All right. So I'm going to have my minus 1, minus 2. So there's my minus 2 that I care about. There's my 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to do some quick. Okay. All right, so I'm going to draw my max, my min, and then my midline. Yeah. I tried. All right, next step number 2 is to convert your starting point for sine. It's the easy one, it's 0, 0. And then I notice that I have to go right 4 and up 1. So that's going to be a plus 4 and then a plus 1. So that becomes the point 4, 1. So go ahead and graphing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I'm really happy that I'm on the midline. That makes a lot of sense to me. All right, step 3 is going to be to find my period. My period is going to be 2 pi over 2. which is equal to 2 pi times 2 over pi. Pi's cancel, and I'm left with 4. So I'm going to do my period line 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Let's go the other direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, now step 4 is to draw the general shape. Notice that we have a negative sign. So that means, just like all signs, we are going to start at the midline, and we're going to be in the middle at the midline and at the end at the midline. But for negative sign, it goes down, and then it goes up. Okay, so here's my midline. I'm going to start middle. So I've got to go down, hit here, up to there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to go down first, then up, and then up, and then down. And that's a good idea to also draw your arrows as well. Perfection. Okay, this next one's cosine, and everything's the same except for our second step, but we can handle this for sure. So first step here is to consider the fact that we've got an amplitude of 3. So I'm going to draw that. Step 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we're actually going to add 1 to that, right? So that's going to be adding 1 there. So we actually have an amplitude of 1, 2, 3, 4, adding 1 to that, and then just 2, negative 2. All right, so let me graph that down here. So I'm going to go all the way up to 4, get a little higher, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I've got down to negative 2, and then I'm just going to do a bunch of these. All right, step 2, this is one you really want to focus on. So step 2 has to do with moving our first point. Well, if it's a negative cosine, where does our first point start? It actually starts at our minimum, right? So we have something that's going to go up kind of like that. Well, what happens to our first point? We still do the following transformation on it. That's going to be this and this. So our first point is 0, negative 3 originally, but then we have to go to the right 2 and up 1. So that's going to be a right 2, up 1. So that's going to give me a point of 2, negative 2. I think now is kind of a good time to mark our everything here. So we've got that. We've got that. And let's check that our point is 2, negative 2. And this is a really good sign that 2, negative 2 is on the bottom, right? We want our cosine to start on the min of that. And if you wanted to, you can also put in your midline here. I don't feel like midline is as important for cosine, but it did ask us for it. So we do have a midline at 1. If you're not sure how I got that, notice that there was a midline at 0. We add 1. So if you want, you can put that in right there. Good enough. All right, step 3 is to find the period. So period is going to be 2 pi over 4. Okay, and that's going to give me 2 pi times 4 over pi, which is equal to 8. So a pretty big period here. So I'm going to mark that. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of gets that one right on the money. There we go. All right, and step 4 is our general shape. So remember, this is negative cosine. So our general shape should be starting at the min. At the mid area here, we should be at our max, and then we're back down to our min. So something like that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that in my picture. I'm going to have my 2 mins here, and then right in the middle, I'm going to be at my max. I'm going to do this over here as well, just because it's going to help me draw this all at the same time. I'm going to be up here. So I've got something like this. Oop, missed that one up. Okay, I tried my best. There we go. All right, let's finish off this last page and be done with the review packet. So in the summer, the air conditioning in a home is set to go on when the temperature reaches 80. That's going to be our max equals 80, and go off when the temperature is 70. So our min equals 70. During the hottest part of the day, this warming cooling cycle repeats every 60 minutes. So period equals 60 minutes. Assume the cooling and heating cycle can be modeled with a sinusoidal function. If the temperature in the house at noon is 75 degrees and rising, okay, rising means a positive sign because it's going to right off the bat be rising, write a trig function. All right. So to find our A, our amplitude, we do max minus min divided by 2. That's going to give us 80 minus 70, which is 10, divided by 2, which is going to be equal to 5. Okay, now we need to find our B, which is equal to 2 pi over the period, in this case 60, and that's going to reduce to pi over 30. Okay, next up is our D, or our midline. Our midline is going to be the average of our max and our min, so that's going to be 70 plus 80 divided by 2, which is 150 divided by 2 is 75. And that's good news because it's saying it's starting at our midline, which is what we want for sine, and it's rising. So that's really good news. All right, so let's go ahead and write this formula. We've got our temperature is going to be equal to positive sine because it's rising when it starts, and it's going to be a 5 sine because 5 is our amplitude. And then our period is pi over 30. I'm going to use t for time. And then we're going plus 75. Notice that 75 is our midline. It's also our D. It's a good way to check that. Okay, write an equation for the following two graphs. Okay, first step here is to try to figure out, is it a positive sign or a negative sign? I mean, we're only going to deal with sign in these problems. So it goes down, all right, first, and so that's going to be a negative sign. Second step is to find the amplitude, and just be careful with this because I feel like these graphs aren't super well labeled. So this is a -1. So we're basically going from -2 here all the way up. Our amplitude goes all the way up to 0. So that is an amplitude of 2. You could also think of it as it being how far this distance is right here. So that's a equals 2. Next step is to find our B. Remember, B is equal to 2 pi divided by our period. Well, what is our period? Our whole period is from here to here, and that is from 4 to 8. Or you could actually count 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So that you could either do 8 minus 4 is 4, or just count the spaces here and you get 4. So we got 2 pi over 4, which is going to give us a pi over 2. Okay, step 4 is to figure out what our translation is really, how far it's been shifted left and right. Well, if my original sine point is right here, and I'm now at 4, -2 for my first point, then what happens is I've been shifted to the right 4, so that's -4, and down 2, so that's -2. All right, step 5 is to make sure that we have our midline correct. We are basically saying our midline is -2. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Last step really is to write our final formula. So that's going to give me y equals a negative, because I know it's negative from step 1, and then -2 for my amplitude, sine pi over 2 x minus 4, and then close that parentheses, and then we've got a, oops, excuse me, a -2. There we go. All right, last problem here. Here, let me erase this and write this in a better location. It's bugging me. Let me just write right there. All right, so I've got y equals -2 sine pi over 2, parentheses x minus 4, -2. I feel better now. All right, next one here, step 1. Is it a positive sign or a negative sign? Well, it goes up first. So that's going to be a positive sign. Step 2 is finding the amplitude. I'm basically going from, you can see here, a -1 all the way up to 2. So that's my amplitude right here. So that's going to be 3. All right, so that's going to be amplitude equals 3. Now to find my, my b, I know b is equal to 2 pi over period. My period is actually not just from here to here. I got to keep going one more. So it's actually from 2 to 8. So that should be 6. Let's just verify it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, so our period's 6. 2 pi over 6 does reduce to pi over 3. Just divide both numerator and denominator by 2. All right, step 4 here is to find the transformation of our first point. So our first point, we're going to look at the green one right here. It was at 0, and now it's been moved right 2 and down 1. So right 2, down 1. Remember, this is all the opposite of what you think it should be. Okay, step 5 is to verify that our midline is correct. So is this -1 correct? Is that our midline? Yes, it is. So we're good to go there. All right, let's write our final answer. This is going to be y equals a positive 3 sign. And then we've got our pi over 3. And then x minus 2. Close your parentheses. Close that parentheses. And then we've got -1. All right, looking good. Thanks for joining me.